Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Daily Fantasy Digest Podcast, the all-inclusive podcast where we talk all things fantasy sports to help give you an edge. As always, I am your host, Joe Bewer, and I'm going to be breaking down this massive 13-game slate on May 7th. It's going to be the main slate starting at 6:05. Before we go ahead and get into this, I want to just let everybody know that moving forward, when it comes to breakdowns, we're going to be doing screen recording and not just audio, something to look at so I can make the lineups in front of everybody so they can kind of see my thought process and the way that I go about making these lineups. Without further ado, let's jump into my favorite pitchers and bat stacks for both cash and GPP options. It's a massive, in my opinion, hitting stack of a slate for this 13-game slate. Coors is on the slate, massively overpriced. There's a bunch of other options I'm going to be looking at because this is a all-in Coors slate or not at all type of slate. I do want to flip it over here to start off with the pitchers. I want to jump over to my cash game options. Starting off high-priced, I'm going to jump over to Fangraphs here just to pull up the Fangraphs for Noah Syndergaard, who's priced at 10-1 over here on DraftKings. So far this season, batted ball rate for the Mets in 2019, 3.43 xFIB, only a 29.7% hard contact rate, only 12.5% home run rate, and a 34.5% fly ball rate with a 50.9% ground ball rate. Very, very good numbers as far as ground ball is concerned. And going up against a team in the Padres who at home, they're not doing as well as we thought this year. The signing of Manny Machado didn't really do much for them. Kind of not the team that everybody expected them to be. And I think after the performance that Syndergaard had, dropping a 40-point game last time, hitting a homer as well, I think this is going to be a great game for him. And to me, the pricing seems a little actually on the underpriced side as far as the other pitchers are concerned. So Syndergaard is definitely going to be my cash option, and I'm going to go ahead and lock him in since we are building a cash game lineup here. For my high-priced GPP, I'm going to go with Jose Berrios at 10-4. We all know that Berrios has not been the best pitcher away from home, but has better numbers at home. Currently this season has an overall of 4.25 xFIB, 35% hard contact, 11% home run, and a 33.3% ground ball rate with a 48.4% fly ball rate. Kind of sort of prone to fly balls. I could see him hanging one out here for somebody like Vlad Guerrero or Randall Grichuk to go ahead and take over the fence. I'm not going to be somebody that I'm prioritizing here in cash games because I'd rather take the little bit of savings and get Syndergaard, who I think is going to have a better upside. And I think the matchup is pretty good for Syndergaard, who's been pretty lights out as of late. The pitching seems pretty terrible, to be honest, once you get into this mid-range. For me, I think this is a pitching slate where you're going to have to pay up for some sort of pitching to be able to cash. As you scroll to the bottom, and you just start scraping the barrel. There's not really any players that really stand out to me as far as people that I want to prioritize so I can spend up for bats. I think that there are some actual cheaper players that you can go after that have very high upside. So for me, I'm going to be going with another high-priced pitcher. For me, in cash games, I'm going to want to go with Jon Lester. So far this year, in 2019, Lester's had a 3.45 xFIB, 41.2% hard contact rate, which is a little scary. Not the worst, but a little scary. Limits fly balls for the most part, 32.4% and a 39.7% ground ball rate. 13.6% home run rate, not too bad. Could be better, but we all know that Lester's going to be facing a Miami team who is absolutely dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. And I think that he has the upside. This could be a 8K game for Lester. We all know that he doesn't throw to first, so the GPP flip here would be to stack any Miami bats who can get on base and steal bases. That's about the only upside you're going to get from this game on the Miami side. But I think Lester is a pretty safe option to get you at least 16 to 22 fantasy points here. So I'm going to go ahead and lock him in. And then if you're looking for a GPP little lower option, not too much lower, but I would go with, not happily, but I would go with Colin McHugh. I think he is a underpriced and undervalued pitcher on the slate. 4.1 xFIB, 34% card contact rate, pretty much standard numbers, same as John Lester for the most part. He does give a little more of a home run rate at 17.9%. Not something that I really am looking for, but for GPPs, I could see you going there. So that's going to wrap it up for pitchers for the most part. I think Thor is the top option here for SP1. You're welcome to do whatever you choose for SP2, but I think I'm going to go ahead and prioritize Lester here. So for me, if I go ahead and click over on Coors Field and go to hitters here, if I bring both teams in here this whole game, this is a bat stack that's just not going to be able to happen if you're going to pay out for a pitcher today. I mean, the top three Rockies are over 5.5. It's ridiculous to me, the pricing. I do think that you could benefit from taking some Giants players here. That's going to be one of my top bat stacks here because they're priced somewhat appropriately. I think you'd have to take a cheap catcher here to be able to fit some of them in. But I'm a big fan of Steven Duger here, who could hit leadoff. Has a great matchup against Antonio Santalenza. He's a lefty hitter here, and I could see him sending 1 yard, especially that we know that Coors is the best hitting field in the league. Another person I could see is Pablo Sandoval, priced at 4. Not too bad. Somebody I could see plugging and playing, especially as he's first base and third base eligible. And lastly, I think I want to plug in Joe Panic here, who's been hitting like 7 spot recently. Pretty decent contact, has a hit in the past 4 games against Cincinnati. Not too bad. Somebody who can give you that upside for the cheap price of $3,900. I think he's a plug and play for me, especially at that price point. Now, my favorite bat stack of the night is actually going to come from the Texas Rangers. This for me is going to be exactly where I want to pay up. It's going to be a little tough, but I do want players like Elvis Andrus, Hunter Pence, Cabrera, Forsythe in my lineup. I do think that this is going to be an overlooked bat stack, especially with Coors on the slate. And I think that this is somewhere that you could look to kind of get some sort of a contrarian edge. You're going to have to piece together some plays, but I think Elvis Andrus is a lock. I think it's just been absolutely ridiculous what he's been doing lately. I think he's probably my biggest hitting lock of the night, going against Steven Brault, who is filling in for James Taillon, who is injured. And I think that Brault should see no more than 2 to 3 innings, and it should be a pretty ugly game because Pittsburgh is somewhat friendly to hitters, and I think that it can cater to Andrus, who is a righty bat, against Brault, who is just scraping the barrel. He's not anything good. Hunter Pence, I think, is somebody else you can go for. He seems a little on the expensive side. I do like Logan Forsythe and a value play that you can look at. I know it's a lefty-on-lefty bat, but I do love Rougned Odor here at $3,900. I think he's way too cheap coming back off of injury. I mean, most recent game against Toronto, 21 fantasy points at $3,800, only rose 100. I see why they would keep the price the same with the bat, lefty bat against lefty pitcher. But I would plug him in as part of the stack. Last stack for me is going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, this is where it's going to get a little tough because I think Brandon Lowe is one of the top plays on the stack or on the slate. I think that going against Arizona, who's pitching a bullpen game with Clark starting, is just not a recipe for something that you want to miss out on. So this could be one of those times where you drop Syndergaard out and put in McHugh just to free up some more of that bat space. I could see that happening, but for me, I'll probably end up prioritizing Syndergaard and Lester here and just trying to make it work. Somebody I see as probably one of the best values on the slate is Nate Lowe. He's been playing a lot lately. Hasn't had the greatest production, but I think this is a gamble you can take just because of how much he's playing with Austin Meadows out. I think that it just adds another, I believe, lefty bat. Yes, lefty bat against righty, which is somebody that I want to prioritize. And I think that he's going to be somebody that you can really look for point production here. Another person that has kind of slowed down lately that I do want to go ahead and touch on over here is Kevin Kiermaier. I think this is just going to be a game for him to kind of excel in. I don't think that Clark is going to be able to stop him at all. And that's somebody that we're going to be able to look to for some pretty good point production. So as of now, you see we have about roughly 3,600 points or dollars left for bats. For me, this is going to be where we drop down a catcher, somebody that's roughly 3,100, like Perez, who could play. I think that Perez is probably going to be my top catching option, adding part of the stack and putting him in and just freeing up a few hundred more dollars. The value is going to be hard to find because of the Coors slate and so many bad pitchers being on the slate that the hitting, the bats are just so overpriced that it's really hard to come by. But I think that what I have here is probably something that is a little contrarian to where everybody's going to go. I can assume that nobody's going to pay for a pitcher over $9K and stack Coors. That is a potential GPP option that you could do. I could see you going there with the Giants and the Rockies because Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story against Madison Bumgarner is just a recipe for home runs. I know Mad Bum can be good at times, but he's not what he used to be. And I think that anybody against Antonio Santalenza is going to be just as good. So people as Steven Duger and somebody like Joe Panic or somebody that I'm going to be plugging in. Keep in mind that there is a little bit of a weather concern, and that's just something that you're going to want to watch out for. So I would go ahead and keep that in mind because that game has a weather concern as well as the Chicago game. So if Lester does end up getting rained out for that game, I would definitely switch over to McHugh. Just for the sake of this video, I'll switch over to McHugh just to see how much you would have left. I think McHugh is the only option. I know the Kansas City has just not been good at all, but you'll have roughly 4,000, which is definitely doable for the rest of the stack. You'll be able to fit players in like Tommy Pham, Yandy Diaz on the Rays, who are top plays for me. Diaz at 4,500, Pham at 4,500 as well. Pham seems a little underpriced for me. And if you're looking at the Texas stack like I am, as well as Elvis Andrus, you can go with Hunter Pence at 4,500, Logan Forsythe at 4,400, and Cabrera at 4,500. So this is going to be my top plays. Like I said, if you don't go Lester, you can go McHugh. But just for the sake of this video and who I would go, as of now, I will be going Lester. So this is what my rough start would look like. I would end up switching this back to Rougned Odor because I think that he's far underpriced for what production he's producing. If you don't want or if you do want Panic and you do bump Rougned Odor out, or if you want to keep Odor, you can go ahead and go Steven Duger, who is probably going to end up hitting leadoff against Santalenza and has been incredible hitting leadoff lefty. And I think he could be somebody who could send one over the fence. But at the end of this video, we do always do dingers of the day. It's been a thing that we've been doing here on the Daily Fantasy Digest. We've been pretty successful, and then some days not successful. But for tomorrow, I think I'm going to go ahead and call a Kevin Kiermaier homer. That is going to be my homer. Also a value play for me. 4,000 is just far too cheap for the matchup against a bullpen game for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I think Kiermaier is going to be somebody that you're going to want to prioritize, especially in outfield that is absolutely riddled with expensive players. So yeah, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, subscribe as well so you can go ahead and make sure that you stay up to tune with all of the videos. And yeah, until next time, there will be an interview this week as well as another slate breakdown. Like always, 3 videos per week. So stay tuned for that. And as always, peace.